Then it should be now Liva Kreislere from Riga, who, if you were here yesterday, she was commentating on a few of the speakers. And Liva, we've asked to make a presentation based on the fact that she's working on, we're actually working together on a project called URBS, Urban Cultural Planning, which is a project working with local, not so much regeneration, but the local potential there is in creating sort of social innovation through artistic practice. And that's us on a bridge somewhere, yes, looking into the Nordic mist. But she will explain about some of these practices in the context, but also look at some specifically in Riga, I think. So thank you for joining us again, Liva.
Hi, thank you for having me. You see the screen and hear me well?
We're fine. The screen is good and we can hear you clear. Yes, yes.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, I'm actually an architect and urbanist. I studied in Denmark something called urbanism and societal change. So, and actually I'm finding my work a lot linked with culture. So looking at how can an architect be involved with the cultural sector and city planning within it. So actually this project is, I'm going to talk from the perspective of this Interact project, which I think, well, yeah, the idea of cultural planning is the core of it, and I'm going to introduce that a little bit and then talk about two of these neighborhood projects within this project from Riga. So yeah, it was initiated by Danish Cultural Institute, and we've been working with this together with Trevor as advisors within a large network of institutions for 4 years now. And it's actually a flagship project under the social innovation. So in a way, it's cultural planning project, but it is recognized as a social innovation. So just a bit about the network of the cities. It's, of course, Baltic Sea region. So we have, I can't see my own screen, 7 countries, 7 cities, 10 communities. And it was very important to find within big cities, metropolises, smaller communities under 20,000 inhabitants, and to look for the ones which had a scarcity of some sort, some kind of vacuum of social capital, resources. I think it was very interesting that in Sweden it says like low election turnover. So this is kind of a statistic that we also were looking at, if there is kind of a little bit of inactivity or sense of abandonment. So a lot of the common challenges of these neighborhoods are actually sense of abandonment and stigmatization, a lot to do with public image and sense of ownership, and feeling like you've been left behind, that there is a lot of accumulation of resources in other parts of the cities. And of course also some overall like problems of empty space, and sometimes also racial or nationalistic conflicts. So just to kind of put it in perspective, cultural planning really recognizes that there is this growing tension between these Occupy, pop-up, social activism, DIY, urbanism movements. Basically everything we've been talking about these 2 days, all these soft processes, and against this kind of more bureaucratic structure, which seems to be just too slow to accommodate the changing nature of these organizations and actions which actually shape the cities we want to be in. We love that they're there, they actually make the culture of the city, but it seems like we're not able to create like structures for them to exist within larger municipal organizations. And one of these could be like an example from Riga in 2014. Since then, it's of course changed a lot. there was a strong reaction from the cultural sector against the Riga Culture Capital of Europe 2014, where smaller, softer cultural organizations were not really recognized as part of the city culture. And a big sums of money were going towards large song and dance festivals, operas, and theater houses. And simultaneously, we have all this empty space in the city. We have a prevalent problem, which was even more in 2014. And cultural actors created 50,000 stickers or so, and citizens were just mapping the city full of empty windows saying, "Occupy me." And since then, actually, an organization called Free Riga has arisen, which is a signal of actually that shift happening at some point. So cultural planning really attempts to look at the city as a whole with all of its empty space and cultural institutions and even individuals. And it's trying to advocate and say that subcultures should be represented also in policy documents. And this is sort of the ideal dynamic we are imagining, where artistic drivers and citizens and the municipality are in some kind of a structural dynamic which is deliberate, not only accidental in a good day, but actually somehow there is a deliberate structure, a deliberate dynamic. And in our project, we have been working within these 10 neighborhoods. We have been working with different types of partners. And in this project, it was really important to find and work not only with the artistic community or citizen groups or NGOs, but really work with also larger cultural institutions like Pushkin State Museum in Kaliningrad, or for example, with municipalities. So let's say Riga Development Department or City Culture Department of Pori. We also, our partner is City Culture Institute in Gdansk. From Alexandra's presentation, you should remember that. And also Free Riga, as I mentioned, is an NGO. And we argued that the culture planning is actually should be creating experimentation zones, not only in the public space with activities that should be allowed, but also within public sectors. So can there be institutions such as, for example, City Culture Institute, that have a certain amount of freedom and flexibility to actually be able to accommodate the fastly changing happenings of the city? And this is clearly a shift from no because to yes if culture, as Tina was mentioning yesterday. Yes, so we're trying to advocate that the soft process should be a planning new normal, and actually cultural actors are key in this. And our project, working with all these institutions, we're trying to talk with everyone and invite everyone to our labs and conferences and projects to advocate that there is a big, larger picture where everyone fits in this one dynamic, and working together could be a key. So the question of whether this is social innovation, as we are part of this Interreg social innovation grant. So we're saying that in this case, social innovation isn't discussed purely on demographic or geographic basis, but looked as a movement or social clusters in which there is a cultural magnet. For example, this could be a festival. And we argue that around this cultural driver, a new social narrative is defined. Arguing that actually a festival could create a new type of community and a new narrative on which to build a planning, a new planning normal. And it also argues that there is a difficulty of systematic versus personal approach, that the cities are actually within their structures, which are there for a reason, they're actually still unable to reach down to a type of conversation where people don't talk to you directly about a road or climate impact or development of a neighborhood or a cycling lane or a green area, but they talk to you about the vision of the future we want to live in. So we see that artists and cultural activists on the bottom could actually talk more broadly about the environment we want to live in. And this could really be like the observatory of what's happening, really testing the temperature of the community. And if these ideas and this research in a way also could seek up to the municipality, this would be a very fruitful dynamic, we argue. And also the question, are artists essential workers? Is culture essential sector? And this pandemic has really shown that this is a really prevalent question. And we argue that culture drivers and culture work actually sometimes works with issues that all of the public sector is dealing with, such as civic involvement, marginalization, and stigmatization. And at the same time, the funding there is only from cultural departments or cultural ministries, and that aren't really funded from social funds. And we argue that there is a shift, there is an overlap where cultural actors are really social drivers as well. So cultural planning is not what needs to happen. It's finding what is happening really, what is driving this community, not putting a new plan in place, but looking really what is the social glue, as Bureau Detours, Vivian said. So in our project, we're really trying to simultaneously 10 neighborhoods, we're trying to observe the differences and the similarities by applying the same type of process. So we're against theming before we know what's there. And so in this case, there's a network map between 4 different neighborhoods, and it's showing the networks of private sector versus public and cultural actors. And it obviously it shows that it's like a really different situation there. So the classical process would be like, and also the way we are doing that in the project. Firstly, we try to find this political mandate so that it's more sustainable, this type of project, where we really talk to the ministries, the municipalities, the intermediaries, and also the local activists to really get everyone on board to say, yes, this is something we are interested in, we want to try this. And then you would go through other stages like cultural mapping, visioning, designing, and implementation. But this could seem like a normal planning project, but the idea is that there is a constant transparency and reflection and involvement of focus groups from also the stakeholders, the private developers, the city employees. And what is the focus point or the kind of the shift, I think, in this process is the disruption that we see that the artists actually deliver in the communities. Because sometimes the participatory process would just be limited to the kind of ideas that are brought to the table originally, such as, you know, we want the garbage problem to be resolved, we want a bench here, which is all relevant ideas. But can we actually envision new futures without being able to see the existing from different point of view? So this is why maybe artistic interventions and outsider views are very important, because the normal planning process will not bring new visions. Normality inspires normality. And a disruption could be something like this, where you're building, it's also a participatory project. So in a way it shows that something could happen in public space, something extraordinary could happen in public space. This place in your memory will never stay the same. It will always be this place with the cardboard towers. There's a new type of community being formed from people who have participated in this project. Yeah, and so by taking part in cultural experiences and actions, you kind of enable, hopefully, people to be more visionary, and also looking at their city from different points of view, like smelling the city or listening to the city or walking backwards or walking blindfolded. All these type of mapping and visioning exercises could help people to create new visions later down in the process. So for us to find these different communities, we were really looking for not an abundance of creative process actually, but for a place where there is just a little glimpse of something shifting, something happening, a couple of people starting something up, and the start of the energy really was interesting for us to observe whether applying cultural planning method, you can really make a change in the communities. I'm just gonna touch upon to end with two projects, part of this project. There are two demonstrator projects, both of them in Riga. This is something that came way down in the process, actually, also to show that there were a lot of not failures, but like learning process of what we can do and what is possible, and actually coming down then to this idea of a cultural newspaper, which is in a way a really simple idea, but what they added to this newspaper is a questionnaire. People were able to write down resources they would like to share that they have, like a car, a garage, maybe, I don't know, a wooden material, some skills they have, they could teach, and you could also mark what you would like to learn. And they got these questionnaires in their post boxes, and this was actually happening in the midst of the pandemic. So also a great example of how this situation could be kind of used in a way. And actually, just to finish up on this, they really connected. They sent out 9,000 newspapers, but they connected maybe a couple dozen people. But these connections didn't exist before, even though they lived in the same neighborhood. They connected people who love to dance. They connected people who, like an artist who works with mosaic, and they and she was looking for someone to do it with, but even the social media these days didn't really allow her to connect someone from that like geographical neighborhood. And now you can really see they are continuing and slowly building on that new relationship that is being formed. And the last one is another neighborhood in Riga. It's much more isolated neighborhood. And there is this 17th century fortress, abandoned fortress, very difficult ownership situation. It's a cultural house in the center of Riga who tried to do a summer festival. They have done it for 4 years now. It has a very sustainable approach, and they were really interested in actually bringing in more of knowledge how to work with the local neighborhood, because the neighborhood itself, it's of course it has some stigmatization issues, and there is a conflict between Russian and Latvian speaking communities, and they were visioning different types of approaches and installations, and actually for me, what I found the most interesting is the work of the artist within this process. So even though the cultural driver, the festival organizers, they were still very much working towards their festival and failing actually to involve a larger community. But by guiding artists within this project and having someone part of your team, but actually have someone with no agenda, just going out and talking to people, they have really embedded themselves much more in the community, because these artists, they just went out and asked people to name a line in the neighborhood. And this could be a physical line or an imaginary line. And then in the end, they filmed videos and audio, and they didn't really, they shifted the audio and video, so people speaking, they didn't really speak their own voice. And then they created a movie out of it and showed it in the festival. But really that is besides the point, what they did with the, what was the artwork, because what it created is a relationship. And actually this is the tall Dutch guy, a Dutch artist actually living in Riga, even not speaking Latvian or Russian, and these guys, the locals, not really speaking his languages either, they created some kind of new connection and new relationship just because someone was interested in their stories. Someone took their stories seriously, their memories of the place seriously, and really wanted to find out the unique DNA, the story that they have to tell. And these people came to the opening and were filming themselves on the TV. But really what happened is there is some kind of a new type of small community. And now he has, he goes back to this neighborhood and visits these ladies, and then they introduce him to their granddaughters and grandsons. And this is the way I think the festival in the end will be more introduced in the community, just by this artist coming from outside and talking to these people. So yes, these are the two of our demonstrator projects, and these are 10 of these in the Baltic Sea region. And this project ends next summer. And we have a lot of online events as well, and physical events, hopefully also. So you follow us, Herb Cultural Planning, and if you want to know more. So far, that's it from me. Thank you.